You don't need another strategy. Here's what you actually need to figure out why you can't implement the things that you already know. I'm Dr. Brooklyn Storm, former psychologist, now business coach, and I help women just like us to build profitable private practices, usually in under 12 months. Being neurodivergent means I see the patterns that other coaches miss, but it also means I'm a truth teller, so I'm not interested in giving you any business advice that sounds good or might be trending, but doesn't actually work for us. Welcome to the Practice Momentum podcast, where we're going to get your private practice sorted out. Thanks so much for being here, and let's get on with the next episode. Welcome back to the podcast. It is so great to have your attention and to have you here again with me. Welcome to new listeners as well. Okay, here's the thing. I have been doing some research and went down a rabbit hole, and anyway, not like me, is it? No, not like me at all. But anyway, it was a good rabbit hole because I figured out that I may be able to create for you a mini playlist. And I thought that would be awesome because if I can do that, I might be able to group all the different types of episodes together, like the ones about the money, the ones about the mindset, the ones about marketing, all of that sort of stuff. So this episode today, hopefully, if I can figure out how to do it, will be the first in a little playlist for you of how to get clients without using Facebook or Instagram or social media. I know. Some of you are in your car smiling and fist pumping the air right now, but both hands on the wheel. This is going to be so good. Well, this is how I'm feeling about it. Hopefully it's going to be so good. All right. So, the first cab off the rank is a podcast. I know. Now, if you've been around for a little while, you know I've probably touched on this before, maybe not too recently. And there have been changes. So if you have heard one of the previous episodes about podcasting, this one will still be useful for you because of the changes. So why a podcast? Well, I'll tell you why I love it and why I think that it could absolutely work for you too. There's a few reasons. First off, it doesn't cost anything, really. I mean, you can get started with podcasting. You need a way to record it. I just use GarageBand, which is part of the software that came with my Mac desktop. Now, if you're a Windows person, I don't know what the equivalent is. I'm sure they've got one. But anyway, I just use that, right? Just free. Basically, I'm just recording. However, you don't need it. I could just as easily, and I have, you've heard me do it, I just record either directly into the app when I'm on my phone. So, for example, when I'm off on one of my getaways, driving around the countryside, and I get inspired to share something with you, and I'm just like bursting to share it, I just pop my little earbuds in and hit start on the record function on the Podbean app. And then, I just talk while I'm just driving along as if you were in the car with me. So that's what I'm saying. Like, you don't need fancy equipment. If you wanted to, you could record all of your episodes just using the voice recorder app on your phone, which we've all got one of those as well. Like, again, I'm on an iPhone. My iPhone, by the way, I only realized, hang on, I'm just going off on a quick tangent now, but my iPhone is, I think it's pretty old. Like, I think I might be due for a new one. I last got a new one just before lockdown. I can't even see. It's probably like a 13. Yep, it says this this iPhone is a 13. Yep. I know. I should update it, but to be honest, because I'm somebody who doesn't like to be on the phone, I only use it for taking photos, usually of my dog, or I'm just using it to catch up on, well, I do use Facebook, so I use it on Facebook when I'm sort of out and about. I use it to deliver coaching to my clients, but other than that, I'm not really using it for anything at all. So it's just not been a thing. But anyway, I digress. Super easy to get started is what I'm saying. Don't need fancy equipment. So there's that. I just do mine in my study, and I try and do it twice a week, but I don't promise myself that, and I don't berate myself if I don't get two done. I would much rather I try and do one on a Wednesday, one on a Saturday, but this is important for you to know, because I don't want you to feel like you've got to commit and you've got to show up on the same days at the same time. You don't, I don't feel, because I think if you're not in the mood, then you're not going to do a good job. So why? Like, just give yourself that day off. I think there've been absolutely times where I felt very in the mood and I've done 2 or 3 in one day, and then I haven't done one for a week. And then instead of a Wednesday and a Saturday, sometimes I've done like a Thursday and a Friday. Like, I don't think it matters. I mean, people will argue with me on that and say, well, to trust you, your audience needs you to always, like, they want to tune in at the same time, same bat time, same bat channel kind of thing. But I just see it a little bit differently. I'm sure that's true for some people. And I know myself, when I'm listening to podcast episodes, it's helpful to think, oh, so-and-so publishes on a Monday, they should have an episode out. But I think my audience know what I'm like. I'm a bit squiggly. I don't do things in a straight line. So I'm lucky like that. And you will be too if you're a squiggly person like me. Yeah, so that's the first reason I think it doesn't cost you anything. The only thing it really costs you is your time. And let's be real, how much time, those of you who are using ChatGPT to create your content, and you're using Canva maybe to create the graphics and the images that are going to go along with the Facebook or the Instagram post, or maybe you're recording reels, like how many takes are you doing, and how many times are you asking ChatGPT to sound more like a person, or like how long is all of that taking you, and then actually posting it, right? It's probably longer than 20 minutes or half an hour. Would you agree? Yeah. Probably taking you longer. You're probably doing that every single day, at least once, unless you've outsourced it, which is awesome, or unless you're just not actively marketing, in which case you're probably running low on clients and bookings and referrals. So anyway, I think that the time trade-off is really, really good. I think it works in your favor with a podcast. So there's that. I mean, you could record your episodes while you're in the car. I mean, I've not only in the car, I'm sure there are going to be some people that say, oh, that's irresponsible, you shouldn't do that. But I think, well, it's no different to if you were like, if I was just driving us around to the next APS conference or the next Pack for conference or something, and we were just carpooling, like I'm going to be talking to you in the car. I don't think it's a problem. Anywho, but you could record it while you're just doing your own stuff, checking your email, making the Canva graphic. Like, you could just record while you're doing other things. So it doesn't have to rob you of any time, which is important if you're like me and time is your currency. Hate having my time wasted. And I do love a good multitask. So yeah, that's the second reason. And the third reason is it really does build trust and authority with your audience. And it does that in a few different ways. It does it because when you're talking, you're just being you, right? They get to hear how you speak, your cadence, the tone of voice, the pitch, the pauses. They hear the energy go up, they hear it go down, they hear you make mistakes, they hear you go off on a tangent if you're like me, like all of the things. And they love you for it anyway. Like, they will overlook it, they will love you for it, like they feel like they can relate to you, or they will just forgive you for going off on a tangent because they know you're going to come back to something really helpful. So there's that. And they can go away and they can implement the thing that's really helpful if there's something to implement. Or maybe they're just coming in saying, oh my gosh, I didn't think of this like that before. And they're having their own little light bulb moment while they're doing their meal prep for the weekend, and things like that while they're listening. So it's so good at building trust. I feel it really does build rapport because people are getting to know you for all of those reasons that I just said a moment ago. They get to hear what you're passionate about. They get to hear what rubs you the wrong way. They get to hear what you're doing. Like, I love to share, what's working really well behind the scenes, because I feel like a lot of private practice coaches never talk about it. And it really bothers me a lot that they don't do that. Like, yeah, I think it's like putting a picture on Instagram or Facebook, right? Most of the time we're going to put the nice glamorous things up that we're happy for people to look at. But I mean, how can you trust a business coach if they're not being honest with you and they're not being transparent about their stuff? And that's why, like, if you scroll back through previous episodes, you'll hear about last year how I was doing these 90-day challenges for myself, where it was like, I generated in the first quarter of last year, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was something like 90K. And I think it was like, hang on, I don't actually remember, but it was some amount of money in the first 90 days. It blew my mind at the time. And then I told you that. And I was like, I have no idea how I did this, but I'm going to try and reverse engineer it, right? Because what I realized as a result of that, because, well, I track all my numbers and I check in every quarter with my numbers and my dashboard and do deep dive, which is what I teach in Momentum, because it's so helpful. But prior to me doing my own 90-day deep dive of my KPIs, I had just been in the day-to-day of tracking, right? And not really fully, deeply analysing and looking at everything. And so I was in the thick of it. But when you do your deep dive every 90 days, you step back and you take more of a macro approach, more of a bird's eye view. And when I did that, and I was like, holy smoke, when I add all of this up, look at this. And and I've shared with you all subsequent episodes about how I was reverse engineering it, how I made it happen, all those kinds of things, right? I mean, I can even tell you right now, it is the 4th of February. So we're in week 5 of the new year. And already I've generated 48K in sales for the year. So, I will always share my numbers. And I think that that's very, very important, because not only does that build for me and my audience, right? My audience are people like you who want to build your businesses. I think by me being transparent about that, it builds trust and credibility. And I think when you're having your podcast, you don't have to talk. I mean, if you're doing grief and loss or trauma or, I don't know, neurodivergence or whatever it is your niche is, you don't have to talk about your own personal stuff, right? But behind the scenes for you might be talking about what you're noticing in your own practice at the moment, in terms of, I don't know, if you looked back over your last 10 new people who joined, what were the emerging themes? What were the emerging concerns, questions that they had, patterns that you're noticing? Like, that's behind the scenes for you, right? And that builds trust then with your audience, because they feel like they're getting inside knowledge, because they are, and other people don't talk about it. So it really does build that trust and authority. And don't worry about, am I good enough? Am I worthy enough? Like, I mean, if I sat here and said to you, oh, I think it's a good idea to talk about your stuff and be transparent, and I wasn't, because in my mind I was telling myself, well, Brooklyn, who are you to be talking about how they should be running their businesses and strategies that work when you've only generated 50,000 in new sales, right? And that's not including my passive income or other things that I do. This is just from my one-to-one work, right? But if I was running a story that there are going to be people out there that would rather hear me say how I generate 100K a month or something, and so therefore I'm not good enough, I would never share that and people would never benefit. But I think it's very important to share behind the scenes along the way for what it looks like for your clients, because when you get out of your way like that, it means that they can learn, they can see what really happens, they can see how long things actually take. And I believe that all of that really does build trust and authority. It really does show that you're somebody that they can come to when the time's right for them to get some support for the challenges that you support your audience, your potential clients with, right? The other thing is, a podcast really is a fantastic way of building a deep, in inverted commas, personal connection with your audience. And I believe that this happens because, well, most podcast episodes would go roughly between half an hour and an hour. I know that sometimes I have done some because I've just had so much to share that have gone for a couple of hours. Now, that hasn't affected my listening. What I can see from my data is that people will just like pause and pick it up again where they left off. Kind of like when you're watching something on TV, right? You might be in the middle of an episode of Law and Order and you got to stop, right? Because it's bedtime. And so you hit pause, and then tomorrow after work when you're home and you're unwinding for the evening, you go back to Netflix, turn on Law and Order and click pause and you finish watching it. That's what happens. So, this is every single episode lasts about that long, and people can start to feel like they know you, and it creates an intimacy, I think, with your audience and with potential clients that you just don't get when you're creating content on your socials. I feel like when you're creating content on socials, it's very heavily processed. Whether you do it yourself without AI, or whether you get AI to do it and you just upload it, or whether it's a mix of the two, I feel a lot of the time for many of us, it's heavily processed. Even just the act of typing a post, you're just typing or writing it out, you're having to process. Whereas when you're speaking, it's like the things land in your head and they just come out of your mouth. So there's not so much editing. And I think for that reason, and because people hear the pauses and the tangents and you forgetting things and stuff like that, I think that all of that really does show somebody who you are. And in a industry like ours, where it's becoming more and more common to see so much fake content, if you can recognize something's AI written by a therapist, like it's not great, is it? Whereas if they come here to a podcast, they actually get you. And I think that's the power of this. That's the power of the podcast, that they're getting to know you. And that's what creates the intimacy. And also usually because they're listening by themselves, they're reflecting on what you're saying, all those kinds of things. And now that benefits you with your audience, because when you're building your audience, right? I say audience, but you might feel more comfortable with clients or client base or potential clients. I don't feel like they're clients until they've paid you. So that's why I say audience, but they need to spend a certain amount of time with you before they will take any action. And on average, it's between 5 and 7 hours every single 90 days. So a podcast is a really great way for them to accumulate that time with you without it taking them away from something else. For example, if you were saying, oh, well, I will just do a lot of reels, right? Reels, you get brownie points for if somebody watches for more than 3 seconds. I mean, what's that telling you? It's telling you, don't waste your time. If you're posting on Facebook, for example, again, it's like 1 second is, considered like a good post if somebody lands on it for a second, because people are just flicking. Instagram, the latest data says 0.7 of 1 second is how long eyes are going to look at your content for. So, yeah, it's not really economical, is it, to be doing all of those things and putting all those hours into that content versus the easy way of doing this over here. And when people are looking at your social media and things like that, it can be taking them away from other things that they could be doing for their business, whereas a podcast can just be sort of going on in the background, or they can be multitasking while they're listening, which is another reason why it really does work for your clients. By the way, you don't need to do a video podcast. They are becoming more popular because you can put the podcast video onto your socials and onto your YouTube and things like that. So if that's something that's important to you and you feel that would be helpful and it feels light and easy for you, amazing, go and do it. You absolutely can. For me, it doesn't feel light and easy to put lipstick on and make sure I look nice and, hope you know who, the one whose name starts with B and ends in Uddy, my four-pawed fur baby. I've got to pray he doesn't bark in the middle of a live stream or something because it's really loud. He's got decibels on him. He's got a set of lungs, this little fella. He's only 2.5 years old, but man, he's got some lungs on him. And, he's very aloof. So even if I try and call him back and I try not to get flustered, I know I'm live streaming. Stressful. For me, audio only works much better. So, yeah. Here's the other thing. When you first start podcasting, you are thinking to yourself, oh, this is maybe scary, or you might be thinking, oh, this is really exciting. For me, it was exciting and scary. I had no clue what I was doing. I started it in response to, where was I? Oh, I was having a fight with the boyfriend du jour while I was in Thailand on a holiday. Yep. We were on holiday. We were staying at this beautiful luxury resort in Thailand, which, come on, aren't nearly all of the resorts in Thailand luxury? You know what I'm talking about. If you know, you know. And anyway, we were having a big fight because he was going to tell everybody that we were dating, and I wasn't ready to make a big official announcement because to me, I was still undecided. He was all in. I just wasn't there yet. And then he threatened that, he was saying that he was going to go tell, he was a psychologist as well. And this was back when I was a psychologist. And he was going to go and tell everybody that we were dating. And it was just mortifying. And I was so angry that he could betray my trust like that. And anyway, yeah, he wouldn't let it go and I wouldn't let it go. He was like, no, I really want to tell everybody because I'm so happy and I'm so proud and this, that, and the other. And I was trying to be nice about it and just saying, not ready yet. Can we just give it some time? I didn't see why it needed to go public and be this whole big deal. And then he said, well, I don't need your permission anyway. And you know what? I put down my knife and fork. I pushed my chair away from what was I having? I think I was having is it called green mango salad? You know the one. It's so delicious with the nuts on the top and everything. It was so good. And anyway, I just got up and I went back upstairs and he followed me up and I was like, don't talk to me, don't touch me, leave me alone. I checked out. Legit, I checked out. And we'd booked this trip. We were away for 10 nights. 10 nights. And this happened on night number 1. I know, right? Here I am in a foreign country having a fight. Anyway, he was not overly supportive of things around that time. And so I was just doing it to prove a point, which is my way. And I had previously said to him that I was thinking of starting a podcast, and he was saying something along the lines to me of, oh, why would you bother doing that? It's better off to be on Facebook. I can't remember if Instagram was around back then. It probably was. I don't know. And yeah, he was just saying I wasn't good enough. I wasn't, smart enough. I wasn't known enough. Why waste your time? All of this. And it just really rubbed me the wrong way. And I was like, I'm going to show you. And yeah, so he went down to the pool and he was just doing laps in the pool. And yeah, I was getting ready to go out and I just thought, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it right now. And so there I was. And I just Googled how to start a podcast. And I found other podcasts that I've been listening to. And one of the people that I've been listening to had mentioned Podbean. Podbean came up in the Google search. And then I put 2 and 2 together and I was like, oh, well, this other person I listen to uses that. Therefore, it must be good. And oh, what happened from there? Oh, and then I saw it was free. So I was like, okay, I'm definitely in. And I was using Canva at the time, and I saw I needed to make a cover. So I couldn't do that because I only had my phone, no laptop or computer. And so I just went on to Fiverr and I paid $5 for somebody to make me a cover. And yeah, what did I call the podcast? Back then, this podcast you're listening to now, was called Manifest Change because I was fully into manifesting and just loving it. And I was getting ready to leave psychology. And yeah, I was like really loving Law of Attraction, Joe Dispenza, what's her name, Elizabeth Gilbert. I was loving, like, I couldn't get enough of, all of this. Just totally loving it. So yeah, I did that. And then also when I was on Fiverr finding somebody to make me a podcast cover, you know how they make suggestions and recommendations? So it came up, do you want somebody to make your voiceover? And I thought, hey, yep, why not? So I paid somebody to also make me an intro and an outro for the podcast. Again, I think it was just like $10. And then I went out for the day and I went and soaked my feet in one of those aquariums where the little tadpole fish thing chew at your dry skin. That's fun. What do they call it? Fish therapy. It was weird but fun. And then I thought I needed to like relax after having that. So I went and had a chocolate and coffee body scrub / massage. That was awesome. Apart from the stretching, I don't like the stretching bit. And then after that, I just went to the markets and I was shopping and I was eating. What were they? They make banana. They get a banana and they cut it in half and they heat it up between two wooden planks, and then they take it off and they squirt some caramel on it. It's probably just called hot caramel banana or something. I don't know, but it was so good. So I had that, and then I went and had some pad thai at my favorite little place. And then, would you believe it, but guess who turned up? How on earth he found me, I don't know. Anyway, he did. I wouldn't talk to him. I was just like, as I said, I checked out. Like, I'm so patient, so patient, so patient. But then sometimes, like, I just hit a limit and it's like everything just disappears in that moment. And everything had just disappeared in that moment. It was like, yep. So anyway, yeah. And then what did I do? Oh, bought some souvenirs for my trip to bring to people back home. And yeah, but the thing is, like, it wasn't hard to get started. And when I did start, I, of course, knew nobody was listening. And to get it published onto Apple Podcasts, again, I just went to Fiverr and I was like, can somebody help me with this? And then they came back to me and said, oh, you need to have like an Apple account to publish it. Didn't cost anything. They told me how to do it. It's not hard. And then I had to have published, I think it was 5 episodes before Apple would add it to their list. So yeah, I had to get about recording 5 episodes, and it was so easy for me to do because I was speaking about stuff that I was super passionate about. It never occurred to me I needed to be an expert on manifesting before I could have a podcast. I was just so G'd up about manifesting a law of attraction and these experiences that I was having and that were happening around me, and like learning about it, and I was just sharing what I was learning, and I was sharing my experiments because you know me, I love an experiment, and I was sharing my experiments, what I was doing and what was working and what wasn't, what happened. And again, it's just like that theme of transparency, and it wasn't really anything to do with private practice. But then what ended up happening was I hadn't finished psychology at the time, like I hadn't retired from psychology at the time, but some peers were like, oh, you shouldn't be talking about that. You know, that's not serious. Like, you should be talking about clinical stuff, and you're ruining our reputation as psychologists by talking about manifesting, and you should just like zip your lip and all of this. And of course, I don't know about you, but when people tell me that, it makes me want to do it more. Sounds just like, who are you to tell me what I can and can't talk about? I'm my own little podcast over here that nobody even listens to anyway. So I just started doing it more. And that was when I first discovered that I didn't mind a little bit of controversy, because I realized when all of this was happening that I never really felt comfortable or safe to stand up for myself before. Again, it's just like the neurodivergence, like for me, it was probably genetic, but came out with all the trauma that I didn't realize that I had, but anyway, and the people pleasing and all of the things. So I had learnt it wasn't safe for me to share my thoughts. And here I am just minding my own business, having a little hobby, just for fun, sticking it to the man podcast over here, the man being the boyfriend at the time. And it was really ruffling the feathers of people who were like my so-called professional colleagues. So yeah, then I was just like, I felt so defiant. I was like, I'm going to do it even more. So I started that's when I started doing like heaps more episodes. Like I was just like banging them out because I had so much motivation and so much I wanted to say. It was just bringing me so much joy. And then, yeah, I eventually, when was it? 20th of September 2020. I remember that date because of the 20s. That was when I officially released my registration, as a psychologist. And right up until that point, I had still been talking about not only psychology, but also manifesting and Joe Dispenza's stuff and Elizabeth Gilbert stuff and Sonia Cicchetti and like all of the things. Like I could not get enough, and yeah, just loving the controversy around it. But anyway, I left. I changed professions, and what ended up happening was a bunch of other psychologists, as you've heard, they were like, hey, been following, and these were people, by the way, who I did not know who they were. I'd never heard of their names. I didn't know their businesses. I didn't know their private practice. I couldn't tell you what field of psychology they were in, but they found me because of the podcast first. From the podcast, they then Googled me, found me on Facebook, saw all of the things, saw all the, controversy, let's just say. Back then you would call it trolling, but there was that was going on. And, there's people that get on your bus and people that get off it. And there were people that got on and they were like, hey, this is inspiring stuff that you're doing over here. Show us how to do it. And that was what led to all of this. So my podcast really opened up doors for me that weren't there prior. It's a very long way of saying it, I know, but anywho, now you wouldn't get all of that in a Facebook post, would you? Or a LinkedIn article. But yeah, this is exactly what I'm talking about. When you're recording, you have the flexibility to be able to go off track as it's relevant or not sometimes. So yeah. Now getting back to the point. The point is when I first started, I knew it was brand new. Podcasting was, I don't think many people even knew what it was. Like it was still kind of like, yeah, it wasn't really such a thing. And I didn't have a big audience. And in fact, even today, I do not have a big audience. So this is for a few reasons. The main reason is because, well, you're always going to have churn, okay? So there are always going to be people that find you, listen for a while, leave, and then they'll come back later on, leave, come back later on, leave. You're going to have people that listen to everything that you put out. You're going to have people that listen to the first 5 minutes of something, decide you're not for them, and leave. So there's all of that going on, yes, for every podcast, right? But at the same time, it's a small audience because it's niched. So it's niched in terms of its marketing, right? So when I think about, okay, I'm going to do a podcast, what's it going to be in? Marketing. Well, some people would say that's a niche, but I say no, go deeper. So marketing what, for who, where. So my podcast refines the niche further, and it's like, well, it's for therapists. Okay, what kind of therapists? Is it for all allied health? No, I really am most passionate about supporting psychologists, social workers, and counsellors. Okay, anybody in particular in there? Yeah, women, because we're nearly all women. So do you see, like, it's refined, versus something that has a little bit more commercial, broader appeal. But with my very small audience and totally transparent with you here, I think, let me just have a look so I can tell you actually what the numbers are. I'm just logging into my dashboard now for you. I don't have bucket loads of people listening to every single episode. Here we go. So if I bring up my episode list, I can see on average probably about per episode 150 people listen. The last three episodes. So the episode that I did on the 22nd of January, which was about cancellation policies and how they're leaving you $20,000 on the table, like that's an easy pickup there. Only 80 people were interested in clicking on that and listening. The other one was after that, and it was about business coaching and why it doesn't work for some people, and talking about the patterns of success and the opportunities for like how to get the most from business coaching if you're in it. That had 87 people listen to the whole thing. And then the last one was about why business coaches shouldn't ever guarantee results. And here's the truth. Here's why. That episode only had 66 people listen. I'm just looking, like, it shows me the last 20 without me flicking through. But on this page of the last 20, I can see that the one that had the most listens was about the national standards. And that had 186 listens, and that was followed by how to do less marketing, but still get consistent bookings in your practice. That had 176. Another one was how to attract more clients for your private practice. It had 168. How to simplify your social media marketing so that you can get inquiries, had 164. So you see that you don't have to have bucket loads of numbers. And it's important that you hear these numbers because, again, I don't know why people keep them to themselves. Like, it's weird to me that people don't be more transparent with their numbers, because the problem for me with that is if I'm recommending you do a podcast, you could find yourself thinking, well, I've published 5 episodes or I've published 30 episodes, and I've still only got 10 people listening, or I've still only got 50 people listening or 50 downloads. Like, please, there is no correlation between the number of people that listen and the number that become clients. There is no correlation. It's total BS that you need to have, thousands of people listening to every episode. You need to be having 50,000 downloads of episodes in order to get clients. That is not true. That may be reflective of, say, bigger mainstream podcasts. Think about maybe, I was going to say Candace Owens, but she's not mainstream, but she's very popular. She's got the most popular podcast in the world. Joe Rogan, very popular podcast, right? Gary Vee, very popular podcast, because it's broad appeal. Gary Vee is all about marketing, teaching everybody about marketing. He's not niching it down to, okay, we can't use a lot of Gary Vee's stuff over here because we've got restrictions placed upon us because of the industries that we are working. We've got restrictions around ethics, code of conduct, privacy principles, HIPAA compliance, membership compliance, like all the things. So we can listen to that podcast, or we can listen to, Marie Forleo's podcast or Alex Hormozi's podcast, but we're not going to be able to use a whole lot of stuff from those because it's so broad. when you're creating your podcast, this is why niching is so important. If you just did a podcast and you called it the Grief and Loss Podcast, you're going to be competing with all the other great big grief and loss podcasts. But if you niched it down and you said, oh, this is the Grief and Loss Podcast for pet loss, and you niched it down again and you said it was for cats, right, or dogs. Do you see what I mean? Like boom, 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 boom. Now you're getting all your beautiful, ideal, potentially clients right there. They've found you. Whereas if you do something super broad, you might have lots of listeners, but there's still only going to be a certain number of clients. Like a conversion rate is like 2% usually. That's considered a good benchmark for therapists. So I think it's always better for any marketing for you to niche. That's why I'm on the backs of everybody who's in momentum who tells me they've got a really good marketing message, and I look at it and it says, helping you with your life transitions and all things for all people all the time. They tell me, yeah, I've got my message. No, you don't. Nobody's going to be looking for that. So yeah, very specific niche for your podcast means a smaller audience, but that audience, those numbers convert more highly. So in doing this podcast, I wonder if I can see, how long have I had it? I'm just trying to go back. If you can hear me clicking, that's just me going all the way back as far as I can. What am I on? Page 28. Okay. My very first, it was 2018, guys. October the 10th, 2018. Look at me. I called it season 1, episode 1. Can you believe that? And it was called Welcome to the Manifest Change Podcast with Brooklyn Storm. There we go. And it had 407 listens. How's that? And then subsequent ones were like how to level up your vibration, how to manifest, how I let go of the how when I manifested a thriving private practice. Here's my morning manifesting routine that generated 23K for me, all of those kinds of things. My process for dealing with intimidating people, because this was the time when people were being so horrible. Life plays out in a podcast, right? So anyway, the point is that, when was this? October 2018. So 19, 20, 21, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 7 years. It's made me hundreds of thousands of dollars through all kinds of things. Clients have purchased courses, coaching, programs, products, everything from downloading free resources to $5 things to $12,000 things to $20,000 things to $50,000 things. So don't worry about, nobody's listening or no. Just, you're always going to have, and look, my numbers have been consistent. Like even looking back here, episode 7, 8, 9 just had like 80 people listening. Not many. But when you go and you check yourself out, right? It's like Googling yourself, but for podcasts. Very interesting, because what you find is what I found last night, which is my podcast is ranked globally now you will hear a page turn, because normally I don't prepare for my podcast, do I? I just riff, I think the cool people call it. But I did take some notes this time because I wanted to be specific with the numbers. So yeah, it's so small, but it is ranked 33% in the whole world of podcasts, of which there are, as of 10 p.m. last night, 3,715,348 podcasts in the world active. Mine's ranking 33%. Now, that's probably not so great because the lower the number, the less popular it is. The higher the number, the more popular it is. So for me being 33%, I could say to myself, oh, that's not great. But I have to remember I don't have mass appeal, right? I am not the Herald Sun. I'm not the Age. I'm not the Sydney Morning Herald having mass appeal. I am is it the Spectre? The Spectator? I am like the Financial Review. I'm like something specific, right? So for me, being ranked 33%, I'm really happy with that. I think I've done really well to get to that, considering I have next to no listens when I compare my listening data, which again, by the way, is not publicly available. So you could be looking at somebody's podcast, you might be thinking, oh, this person's got their stuff together, or they really know. But I mean, I could go to the Tony Robbins podcast and I will never know how many people listened to his last episode because the numbers are private. I'm sharing them here with you now because I believe in transparency, but you just never know. So don't assume people are like crushing it because they're not. I used to think one of my former coaches, I found him also on a podcast, and I used to think he was totally crushing it. And then one day I was telling him, like, I think I'm going to like stop doing my podcast soon because, or I'm going to hit pause on it or something like that because I was feeling like it wasn't going anywhere. And he was saying, well, what makes you think that? And I was like, well, it's not as good as yours. And then he showed me his dashboard and I was like, oh, we're both doing similar numbers here. So don't assume, right? Now, with that 33%, yeah, I'm super duper happy with that. But the other metric for my podcast is that it is in the top 5% globally of all the podcasts. It's in the top 5% of the most popular podcasts. So what's that telling me? That's telling me you don't need a massive audience to have one of the most popular podcasts, okay? It's telling me niching works. It's telling me you don't need to put all these obstacles in your way about, oh, well, you know, she's probably got somebody editing her podcast and doing this. No, I don't. It's just me. And you've heard me do it. Like, I will just, if I'm in the car in Dalesford driving around, or Bendigo or Ballarat, wherever I happen to be on my adventures, and I get inspired, you've heard, like, the sound quality is not great. You can hear my indicator clicking. You can hear trucks, you know, tooting their horns, right? It's not fantastic sound quality. Those episodes don't have an intro or an outro, right? I don't have somebody editing and removing every time I don't know, make a noise I shouldn't, or every time I cough, or, do you know, like, or every time I have to like reset the password on my screensaver so I can look at my screen and give you things like this data here. I don't have anybody helping me with that. I don't have anybody making me fancy titles and fancy show notes and things. That's just me. And, you know, I just get the transcript basically, and from the transcript, like, this is what it usually says straight after I publish, the show notes will come. It's because the transcript comes after I put it on YouTube. So I just pull the transcript off YouTube and then I put it in ChatGPT and I'm like, hey, can you please make this a show note for me? That's it. Like, it's just me. And then, of course, I don't put exactly everything that Chat puts because it's not usually like sounding like me and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes if I'm in a rush, I don't edit it too much. The goal is really just make sure I've got my SEO in there, right? I know people don't normally read the show notes. They're not going there for the show notes. They're going there to hear. So the point is, you can have a podcast that's in the top 5% in the whole entire world of podcasts with 76 listeners per episode. This is important because when you've got this happening in your practice, of those, I don't know if it's 100 people that listen, if it's 50 people that listen, whatever the number is for you and your podcast, they're a great potential client for working with you. They're already, if they've listened more than once or if they've stayed more than 10 minutes, it's a really good chance that they're resonating with something that you're putting out. And that's important because it means that you can put out more stuff to help that person. And that's what value is, right? I hope that when you listen to this episode today, the value that you get from this is realizing you don't have to be on social media. You're realizing you can get started with a podcast pretty easily without it costing. If you're somebody who's like perhaps just starting and you're not a profit yet and you would like to pay for all the bells and whistles with nice software and editors and things like that, you can get started now without doing all of that. I hope that this has been useful and the value has been in actually hearing what the numbers truly honestly look like, because hopefully that's gonna take away any imposter syndrome or remove any of the who am I to do it, like fine for her, she's got 30 years and a PhD and she's this and she's that. Well, even with all of those things, look, right, there are clients of mine who I've taught to podcast who get lots more people listening, right? It's not about the vanity metrics over here. It's not about how many listen or how many. It's not about that at all. It's about seeing your podcast as a way to genuinely help people that you would genuinely like to work with in your business. So that if a person arrives at a point in their own journey, wherever they are with their health and wellness for you or with their business, if it's for me, where they do decide that they want to get help, they already know you. So even if they go and research the competition or look for all of the other things, right, it means that because they've already been in your world for a little while, the trust is there, the rapport is there, that connection is there. They feel like they know you, and that really helps them make a decision that feels good for them, that feels safe for them and aligned for them, right? So clients who work with me most of the time have listened to at least an episode. Now, there's 569 episodes or something. Of course, nobody's listened to all of those. People will listen to whatever they're going to listen to. But the moral of the story is that it means that when they come to me, they get what they see or they get what they hear, versus if they go to my competition, that person might have a very nice, pretty website and might charge less, but that potential client kind of doesn't know what they're getting themselves into over there, because I don't know, am I going to get along with that person? Do they like me? Do they think like me? All of those kinds of things, right? That's what I mean by it's building the trust and the intimacy. So don't worry if you start a podcast and it feels like it's only your mum and your business bestie and, you know, your friends from high school that you grew up with are the only ones tuning in. And leaving reviews and things like that. Like, don't worry about that. That is not important. What's important is that I think get out of your own way with it. Instead of making it about you and saying to yourself, nobody likes me, nobody's listening to my podcast, I think I'll go eat worms. Instead of doing that, my guidance would be see it as an asset for your business that can bring you in beautiful solo line clients that may never jump on a discovery call, or if they do jump on a discovery call, it's the connection's already there. AKA, you never have to sell, which is nice. They already know you, like you, and trust you. So, yeah, I was going to say something else then, but I've just forgotten. So yeah, you don't need a lot of people is what I'm saying. What else? Just final notes. What have I got here? It's not hard to get started. That's right. It doesn't cost anything really. That's right. Well, it's going to cost you some time, as you've heard. Oh yeah, don't give up. So I think on average, most people will record and publish between 5 and 10 episodes, and then they get discouraged because they feel like no one's listening. Like, there've been people that had more than 80 plays and they're thinking no one's listening. Even if only one person's listening, isn't it worth it to help that one person? Oh, that's what I was going to say. Start seeing your podcast as an asset for your business, as a tool that is working for your business. Because here's the other thing. Unlike social media that evaporates, disappears, all the things, with a podcast, right? I mean, if Facebook shut down, let's say something happened and Mark Zuckerberg, I don't know, completely pivoted and just said, you know what, I'm shutting it down. If he shut down Facebook and Instagram, you've lost all your followers, especially if you don't have their email addresses and things like that, right? You've lost all of that work and you've lost all of that content. If you have a podcast, so if I have a podcast and I don't know, Podbean shuts down or something like that, my little platform over here shuts down, big deal, so what? My episodes are distributed everywhere. They will still play for people on Spotify, on YouTube, on Apple, like they're still going to go everywhere. And I'll just go and get myself another feed, but I don't need to rebuild my audience. And the other thing is, unlike social media where the content moves quickly, right? I mean, if somebody wanted to find content, they're going to have to scroll a lot on your page to find it on social media. Whereas, and that's what I mean, like if it's not top of mind and it's not like in the current feed, people don't see it, they're not going to know you've got it. Whereas with a podcast, for example, people can just type into Google, you know, podcast episode on how to get clients without using social media, which is the title of the podcast, right? And it'll come up time and time and time again. So it means that like YouTube, the things that you put out, do the marketing long term. And I've got so much proof of this. Like, even you can see my last 3 episodes about what to look for in a business coach, why business coaching works for some people and not for others, and how you can make it work for you, why business coaches shouldn't be promising you the world, and what the flags are. Those last 3 episodes tell me you don't really give a hoot about that, right? Totally fine. I can use that information and come back to what you do care about, which I just have a look, and it's the things that have got the highest plays and downloads, which tend to be marketing ones. So, okay, I will do more marketing ones, but people will say, oh, okay, well, I found her podcast. I'm not interested in her last 3 episodes about business coaching for private practice, but what else has she got? And they'll just scroll through the little episode list there and they'll click on something, right? And they can go back and they can do a little search in Apple Podcasts, in my little corner of the world of Apple Podcasts, and they can see what other episodes I've done on marketing or manifesting or law of attraction or finances or passive income or this. They can just do a little search and it all comes up. It doesn't rely on me constantly doing active marketing to get it out there. It doesn't disappear. It's there for good unless I go and manually delete the episode, which I don't think I've ever manually deleted an episode unless it was by accident, which I may have done once or twice, because you know me, I do like to record things on the fly on my phone on the podcast. And sometimes when you go to save stuff in the app, if you don't have your glasses on and you're short-sighted, you can absolutely have a case of, you know, fat fingers pushing or tapping on the wrong thing. And that has probably happened to me more than once. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just lasts so much longer than posting on social media. Yeah. The other thing too is when you put your podcast together and you publish it, depending on where it goes, a transcript's generated anyway. If you publish on Podbean like me, I'm not affiliated with Podbean, by the way. What was I going to say? They automatically give you options of where you want the distribution. So I always say, like, permanently go to Apple, go to Spotify, go to YouTube, right? It might want to send out to other places like Listen Notes or iHeartRadio or Player FM or all these ones I'm really not that familiar with. I'm fine with that. Yep, go do your thing. So what was I going to say there? Something about distribution. I forget. Anyway, doesn't matter. If I remember, I'll come back to it. I'm just like double checking the last bits of my notes. Yeah, your marketing for your private practice doesn't have to be hard. It gets to be easy. See podcasting as a business asset. Put it everywhere. Let people know that you've got episodes out. And over time, you will start to see what your audience and potential clients are most interested in, and what they're not most interested in. And then that informs you as to, sorry, if you can hear clicking, that's just me going back to, oh, that was a big one. I was just going to go back to the start. What have we got? Oh, masterclass replay that I did on selling digital products in your private practice. So that had 511 plays. There we go. My one on imposter syndrome had 444. So, you know, you can look at these numbers and they tell you exactly what your clients are interested in. And it's very helpful because it tells you what to do more of. And that's helpful because, yeah, you want to be serving your clients, right? And yeah, that's pretty much it. But if this episode was helpful, which I really hope that it was, I will try and, as I said at the start, create a little playlist for us that has a few. So I want to do a playlist that's got options and alternatives to getting clients for, doesn't matter if it's your one-to-one or your one-to-many services, products, programs, offers. I want to create this little playlist for you. So this will be the first one. Pray for me that I can sort it out. Pray for me that I don't go off down other rabbit holes. And if it was actually helpful, would you please do me a favor, if you feel good about it, of course, not forcing anybody or twisting anybody's arm, but a review would always be helpful. Anyway, thank you so much for being part of my world. And also too, massive shout out to two of my beautiful clients in Practice Momentum who both sold out their programs. They didn't use podcasts, but they're both wanting to start podcasts. So super happy to get them started with this as well for their next programs. I know, it's so much fun. It's so much fun. Imagine what you can do with like a little bit of support. It goes a long way, right? Anyway, my lovelies, thank you so much for listening and have a beautiful, beautiful day. Bye. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Private Practice Podcast. So as you reflect on today's insights, imagine creating real success in your private practice without going down rabbit holes or exhausting yourself with business activities that don't move the needle. With Practice Momentum, you have push of a button help available on demand. It's like having an expert in your pocket ready to guide you whenever you need it. Visit brooklynstorm.com to discover how Practice Momentum can transform your approach to building a thriving practice. I'm Dr. Brooklyn Storm, and I'll see you next time as we continue exploring the mind, business, and spirit of private practice success.